And hi, this is Ed in San Diego, and welcome back to Global Business News TV Talk Show Network. And you're on Global TV Talk Show today with James Moss, who happens to be in Manhattan. And as you can see in that beautiful picture, he bounces between London and New York. So welcome, James Moss.
Hi, Ed. Great to be back. Lovely to see you again.
Good to see you, and I'm glad we're both wearing these glasses. So we're going to talk today about Curzon real estate and property, London and New York. This is kind of a specialty thing. You've sort of grown up in high-end real estate in London, and now you've entered the New York scene the past few years. And I guess it's pretty tricky, isn't it? But a guy with your background, the deep background in London, in ownership and high-end consultations with global people, I know you could manage your way through that thicket, but I would find that daunting. So why don't you talk a little bit about what's the difference in the property market? Not necessarily the dollars and cents, the pounds and pence at this second, but just the complexity. Is it equal or is it just a ball of yuck to deal with?
Yeah, well, you know what? There are very few people who actually do the crossover. And it takes time, it takes experience, and it takes a lot of work, actually. Um, so the interesting thing is actually sort of flipping it the other way. The similarities are that the markets move in very similar ways for
Hmm.
very different reasons, mind you. But if you look at the price per square foot, or the trends of what's happening in New York, and you look at the price per square foot and the trends that are happening in London in terms of the real estate markets and values and the sort of percentage changes, they're incredibly similar. So your starting point is that you have these similarities going between the markets. So when London is up, often New York is up. When London is down, New York is down. When New York is having an affordable housing crisis, London's having an affordable housing crisis. But the reasons, and this is where it really starts, the differentiation really comes into play, is that the drivers are very different often. But there are also some similarities. Interest rates, for example, has a huge impact on global markets everywhere, but particularly in London and New York. Um, so what one has to understand, and the way we sort of help and guide clients, is in the legal structures, the market structures, and the operational structures between, for instance, London and New York. If you're buying something in London, it's totally different in New York. If you're going through the buying acquisition process in New York, it's totally different from London. It's like a different planet. Okay, it's like jumping between Earth and Mars. You sort of really got to understand how it works. You need to understand not just the legal side, but you need to understand how boards work, for example. You need to understand the math. So, for example, buying in London as a foreigner or a high net worth individual is much more expensive in acquisition and purchase costs than it is in New York. So you have things like stamp duty in London, which can be as high as 12 to 15%, whereas your equivalent in New York is like a 1% um, wealth tax. Well, it's not even a wealth tax, it's a mansion tax, is what they call it. So that's a huge difference. But the cost of holding real estate in New York, you think of property taxes, the SALT, is so much higher than in London. Also, if you're in a skyscraper, a condo, a co-op, whatever it's going to be, you are paying very, very high monthly maintenance and service charges. Those service charges can be very high in London, But they tend to be more top end types of properties, if you're with me. So there are all these idiosyncrasies that need to be worked into the equation. So when we're working with American buyers in London, which we've done many times over the years, we can talk their language and we can sort of translate that. For Brits and international, because we act for a lot of international clients coming into New York, coming into the States, we can take them through the equivalents on where they're coming from. So, we work, for example, with a number of Middle Eastern families. They're a very good example. And the Middle Eastern model, the Dubai model, is actually much more similar to UK than it is to New York. But we can navigate and talk the buyers and the owners and the clients through that, and we can advise them. We can also work with and advise their advisors, their lawyers, and so on. So we can sort of do a lot of hand holding. We often do this when we're helping companies and businesses set up in New York, particularly at the moment. And we sort of, guide them through the whole process, of which real estate is an important part, but it's not the only part.
Okay, let's back up now. And I really thank you for that in-depth comparison and analysis. It's very unusual, and it's actually quite exciting. But think of what's going on in the geopolitics in the world right now. And here we are in mid-July of 2024. And the politics around the world are crazy. So we're not going to get into that. The real estate relocation business is crazy enough. So let's talk about your experience as a surveyor. Maybe I'm mispronouncing that, but clue me in and the audience behind me out there. Um, you're an FRICS. Now, what does that mean?
Oh, okay. Well, a chartered surveyor is a very British international designation, and it's essentially a property expert. It's a combination of law, valuation, technical structures of buildings, sustainability, all that side of life. A lot of it leans towards architecture. It leans very heavily to investment and development and that type of analysis. So switching that into American parlance, I guess the first thing to say in the UK, you don't have to be licensed to deal with real estate. It just so happens I'm a chartered surveyor, which is quite a heavyweight thing, but you don't have to have it. But it does I think it brings a lot of value to clients, certainly to their advisors when we're working with them. RICS is the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. It sounds very grand. Uh, it's a sort of trade union for property professionals of a certain level, if you like. Um, it's the equivalent I see over here is really the appraiser side, which kicks in quite heavily. So, for example, when I've bought properties or sold properties for clients and so on, and I talk to their appraisers because I want to understand how they've got to their valuations. And also to understand any technical elements with the buildings. So we bought a big house for someone in the suburbs a few years ago, and it had a massive great crack running down it. So being a surveyor, of course, I got very excited about that and said to the appraiser, said, what's going on with the structure here? And he was actually very good. He said, there's nothing to worry about. It's settled. The house was built 150 years ago. It's on very solid ground. In fact, it's rock underneath. London properties tend to be built on London clay. He said there's no movement, there's no life. We're absolutely fine with it. It's stable. We can just patch it up. And that was great. And I could talk his language to him. When we're working with clients who are acquiring offices, for example, and they're doing fit outs, it's often good to be able to identify what is structural and what is non-structural.
So
And
you just
it's
use the word fit house. What is fit house?
sorry.
You just use in passing, you use the word or the phrase fit house.
Oh, fit out. Sorry.
Yeah, fit out. What
Fit
is that?
out. Sorry. What's the American equivalent? It's basically when you go into a shell and core, you go into an empty building,
Oh,
and you
I
just
see.
got the
Okay.
structures there,
Right. Okay,
and that
good.
you usually bring in an architect
Yeah,
or
got
someone
it.
at that point, maybe an engineer. Hopefully not an engineer. And yeah, you work with them, and but even before you get to that stage, you need to be able to look at the properties and go, okay, this is a conventional grid structure of certain things. We'll be able to move it around. We can see where the service cores are, that sort of stuff. It's very dry, but actually it's rather essential, particularly if you're about to go and acquire a building or, sign up for an expensive lease or something. So it's really quite handy chatting to someone who actually knows what's going on. And I think we do that pretty well.
So I understand that about 20% of your activity is London-based, 80% New York-based currently.
Yeah, my personal activity tends to be more 20% in London. We have, but that's increasing all the time, I have to say, because London, Curzon's been in London for, God, I don't know, it's getting on for 25 years now. That we've been working with private clients and so on. I have a very good team in London. I have a really excellent team, a great partner over there, excellent property management team. So what we're able to do is work particularly with US clients looking to buy or rent or relocate to London and move their companies over and that type of thing. On relocation, but it's more on the private client side. Relocation, I'll come back to later because we tend to focus much more in New York, high end for that because of the skills that we have there. Um, so yeah, so that's sort of where how that all works.
Okay, let's get into a display. You have a couple of images.
Yeah,
Yeah, so let's first look at New York. Okay, I understand there's one in particular that you want to
yeah,
show
yeah.
us.
Well, I'll show you a picture and tell you a bit of a story, a little bit of a story about a building that we recently acquired for a client in New York, which is this one here. Um, This is the Strata's condo building, very high-end building in Chelsea in New York, which is probably one of the most expensive, desirable areas of Manhattan.
So
And
Chelsea is on the west side, then near the Hudson River.
yes,
Yeah, and
that's
is
exactly
it
right.
south of 42nd Street, right?
Yes, it is. It is. So this particular building, as I recall, let me just check my note. This is on 24th Street.
Uh-huh.
And it's right over. It's got fantastic views, absolutely stunning views, over the Hudson River. I mean, really impressive, actually. So this is a property that we literally have just finished signing up for a client. It's actually someone renting, okay, and it's quite an interesting story. It's quite an interesting example. So what we have here is a very modern building. Um, we acquired the one bedroom apartment, okay, which is very similar to the one you can see here. And we had to go through this extraordinary performance, which you only get in New York City, of dealing with a board. So the story is very simple. We had a client, very high-end corporate client, so this really is in our VIP sort of luxury service. And this was with a relocation management company that we do a bit of work for. But the whole thing was international. It was coming from UK and beyond. And a very important individual being moved to New York. He's constantly on the go. He's always somewhere else in the world, outside of London, outside of New York. So he's a hard guy to keep track of. Um, so we found this apartment. Um, the rent was 6,400 a month. Okay. His company gave him a full housing allowance, okay, to cover that. So that was fully covered.
Well, now that doesn't include the extraordinary other costs.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. This is just paying for the rent, covering the rent. And by the way, this is on top of his very, very decent salary. Um, so the first thing we had to do was do the math. And the rule in New York is that the income that the individual has to show has to be 40 times the monthly rent. 40 times the monthly rent. So we were looking to show something like 256,000 on this. Now, this guy, bearing in mind, this guy already has the rent fully covered and paid for by his company, in addition to his salary. So we really had to work quite hard to put those numbers together. And he was a little bit shy. I mean, not by much. I mean, like, 10, 15,000 or something. And he could have easily made it up. So what we did is we turned around to his company and said, look, you're paying for the housing allowance anyway. Why don't you guarantee the lease in addition to? And they said, absolutely not a problem. We're very happy to do that.
Now, the purpose of doing that would uh, facilitate all the board shenanigans.
That's right. That's what we were leading up to. The landlord was very happy. The landlord was very happy. The profile of the tenant was excellent. Financial profile was excellent. The job description and background was fantastic. Everything was, they were very happy with that. The individual, when we struck the deal, didn't actually have a social security number at that point.
Hmm.
So again, that's another barrier you have to deal with when you come here. So how you deal with the whole social security thing. We advised the client, we worked with the landlord's agent, and we got through that. No problem at all. We actually got through all of that. We had to demonstrate visas and so on. We got through all of that. These are all the hoops you have to go through. So we got all of that done, and then we had to put the board package together to get the approval from the board. And the board package, I think we had 27 different documents that we had to put online. Okay. I mean, an enormous amount of information, a lot of it very personal, including a net worth statement. And we had to go through all of this, not for the sake of the landlord, Ed, but for the sake of the board.
So
And we
let
did,
me ask you if we could take down this picture and let's go full screen and talk to our audience because
yeah,
I'm sure they know the building
I'm
already.
sure they got it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and we could conserve the megabyte use. So, so
Right.
please continue about the board and what was next.
Well, so then what happened? You've got to bear in mind the clients traveling all over the world, all around the world, so different time zones and everything. We're communicating by WhatsApp. That's the way we're keeping the show on the road. And also dealing with the relocation management company, who are excellent. I won't name them here, but they were absolutely first rate. And they were dealing directly with the client, who's a global corporate company. Okay, so we're talking about big boys here, long trousers, people who know what they're doing, and they've got a lot of money in the bank. And anyway, so we then put it up to the board. The other thing is everyone needs paying before all of this happens, which is again unheard of in most parts of the world. So before the uh, landlord's agent will push the button on the board package online, they need to be paid. Before the board will look at the information, the landlord has to go online and pay a whole load of fees again before the board will even look at it, or before even the managing agents will submit the board package to the board to look at. So by this time, we've laid out, I don't know, over $20,000. And we haven't gone anywhere. We haven't got anything yet. And it goes to the board. And then we wait. And no one responds, and no one tells us what's going on. The managing agents don't know. The landlord's agents don't know. And we don't know. And we're politely following up, but we don't want to upset anyone because it's very sensitive. So the board then come back to us and say, you know what? We'd like more information. We want to know what else this guy's got. and we're looking and we're going, well, hang on, he's got the rent fully covered. He's got a sort of you know, Forbes 500 company guaranteeing it. Um, we've got all the rent pay. We've given references after reference after reference. I mean, like, 3 financial references, 5 personal references. I mean, it went on and on and on, And they're saying, well, actually, what else does he own? Well, what's that got to do with it? What I mean, I'm not saying this to the board, mind you, but we're saying what does anyway. So what we do, it just so happens this client does own a bit of property elsewhere. We put a schedule together, we send it over to the board, and then what happens is we wait again because everyone does things in their own sweet time. It's the holiday period and so on. And it was only this morning. This is like 4 weeks after this whole thing started, maybe closer to 6. We get the board approval through.
Whoa,
And
hallelujah.
that's New
Boy.
York.
Oh my God.
That's New York. And you know what? I mean, I don't know how many deals I've put together in my career. I know it's an awful lot, and I know the values are very high. But I've got to say, I think this is one of the most drawn out, trickiest things that I've had to deal with in a long time. It's process. You go through the process. You go through the process. But it seems to me that a lot of these boards are sort of writing the script as they go, and they're all different. There's no rule of thumb for any of them other than the rent. And there's another rule if you're going to get a guarantor in. Um, so every situation is unique. You have to keep you cool. You have to manage your client's expectations, and you have to get the deal through.
Oh my God. I'm tired of just
Yeah, I know.
imagining
I know
what
you
what
feel.
you do. Okay, let's look at
Anyway,
London. I think you have a nice slide there to show us about London.
yeah. So we do lots of we do have a lot of really great property in London. And this is an example of a very an excellent high-end small development in Belgravia. I'll show you the picture of the building. So this is the building here. It's one of these beautiful white stucco buildings. Anyway, we work with a number of high-end developers in London because that's what we've always done. And one of the interesting things about London is the second largest group of high-end buyers in London are Americans. And the other thing is they've had the advantage, or the Americans have the advantage of these fantastically beneficial exchange rates right now. So it's really cheap to buy London property. Um, and this is a good example. There are 3 or 4 apartments in Chesham Street. Now, Chesham Street is just around the corner from where Margaret Thatcher used to live. It's one of the super prime, loveliest parts of London and very, very exclusive. So we brought these properties over to New York to American buyers, and what we were doing here is very simple. Simply, we were just introducing them to the market and saying, if you're looking for something in London, and these properties are in the region of 9 to 12 million US dollars each. Come and have a chat with us if any of these are interesting, or if you're looking for anything else, because we have a team in London with a terrific network. A lot of properties we buy in London never hit the open market. And so we brought them over here. And we had a bit of interest, which was great. What we now do is we now market these directly through Curzon, this type of thing, directly through Curzon to American buyers here in New York or in the US. And that includes Florida, going down there. And it also includes, sort of up in the Hamptons and so on. And we have an extraordinarily good network over on the West Coast. So we're sort of, in the wealth traps, if you like. And this is the sort of thing that we do. We don't just deal with high end, we also deal with good quality. I tend to put the quality before the price, to be honest with you, because if the product's good, because 1 bedroom investment apartment somewhere else in London at a low price, that's absolutely fine. But what we're interested in is the quality, and we are prime London specialists. That's the market we know and operate in best.
Well, it seems like you have board expertise par excellence.
Yeah, well, we know what we're doing. I think that's really the point. And, it doesn't cost anybody anything to have a conversation and explore opportunities. We don't have to do a hard sell here, to be honest with you. Um, we work with a number of really high-end and very professional organizations in New York and in London. We also have a very good network out in Dubai. And we don't just work with residential property, Ed. We also work with commercial property. And we'll find offices for people as well. So we can sort of do the whole turnkey situation. You're moving people as a company, you're probably moving them for a reason, and we can help out across the board. And that's what we do.
Talking with James Moss from Curzon, that's Curzon, real estate and property, London and New York. Thank you very much. What is the website or email people should know about?
Yeah, sure. Our website is www.curzoncentral.com. For the American website, it's curzoncentral.com/US.
That's Curzon.
Z for zebra or zebra.
Zebra. That's a good one.
Zebra. Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for being my guest on Global TV Talk Show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's great.
Thank you. Okay, this is Ed signing off, and bye-bye. Thank you.